I've always felt this responsibility that's weighed pretty strongly on my heart to step up and really embrace myself and be authentically me for the benefit of others. And that's something that really sparked the creation of the Pride in Ag.
Welcome to the 5th episode of The Diversity Imperative, a podcast dedicated to unearthing the agriculture sector's potential. We'll talk with diverse voices and industry leaders to motivate listeners to take their organizations, whether it's the family farm or a life science company, to the next level when it comes to stewarding their most important resource, people. My name is Hannah Conchu, and I'm a grain farmer from Cluny, Alberta.
And I'm Erin Gowerluck, and I lead a national grower association in the nation's capital. Our goal each episode will be to dig into some great conversations that go beyond 280 characters and that seek to inspire a broader dialogue, engaging all people in our sector, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or ability, through rich and candid conversations which consider a variety of perspectives. We look forward to exploring ways to overcome barriers and make diversity and inclusion a topic that everyone is comfortable talking about. Today, we're lucky to be joined by Julia Romanoli, Production System Specialist with John Deere, located in Guelph, Ontario, and the creator and curator of the Pride in Ag Instagram account. Thank you for joining us today, Julia.
Thanks for inviting me, Erin and Hannah. I'm honored to be here.
We're just so glad to have you with us. So let's get right to it. Tell us a little bit about your career. So I believe you started off at a young age on the dairy side of things. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's true. So I grew up in rural Ontario, and my passion really for agriculture started in the local 4-H dairy club at the age of 10. So between 4-H and helping my auctioneer father sell farm equipment, I have always found agriculture really to be my home. I graduated from the University of Guelph with a degree in agricultural science and started with John Deere right after, which has really provided really great travel opportunities across the US and Canada to explore other agricultural practices outside of just the dairy sector that I was so familiar with. In 2017, I relocated to Western Canada, where I learned more about small grains and led precision agriculture for Alberta and British Columbia. And today I'm responsible for Eastern Canada's hay and forage production system. So really working with our dealers and our customers to really understand the tie between technology, equipment, agronomy, and how it fits into the dairy and livestock sector. So you can say that green runs in my blood a bit. My mom is a daughter of a John Deere dealer, and my dad's not too far away from the farm as well. He grew up on a fruit farm, so I'm happy to continue the legacy in my family anyways with John Deere. Nice.
This is a good place to razz you about green paint, I think.
Oh yeah, bring it on. If you checked my blood, you see it wasn't red. So.
Oh, that's too funny. So how has your day-to-day been affected by COVID over the past year?
Yeah, predominantly I work outside of an office most days. So I already had the home office set up, but in terms of typical travel every day, visiting customers and dealers across multiple provinces, that's definitely changed. So a lot more virtual meetings, a lot more folks getting comfortable on Teams. I'm excited though now that the weather is getting warmer and things are starting to change a bit here where I'm located in terms of restrictions. Being outside is a reality where we'll still be able to meet customers as needed, and excited to see that as things warm up. I know you have snow on the ground still, so you're a little further apart from that, but already getting out and visiting customers and dealers. And to me, that's really what it's all about. So I'm happy to leave my computer behind.
Yeah, for sure. And the spring and summer season makes that easier when you're outside and not worried about, getting too close to people. So we'll all, I think, breathe a little easier once we can be outside.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Thanks, Julia. So Pride in Ag is what we're really excited to talk to you more about today. Tell us about the motivation behind the creation of the Instagram account and this online community.
Yeah, conversations with my peers who were in the LGBTQ community and also in agriculture over the years, really surrounding the topic of what's going to make things better, really sparked it for me. And I've always felt this responsibility that's weighed pretty strongly on my heart to step up and really embrace myself and be authentically me for the benefit of others. And that's something that really sparked the creation of the Pride in Ag. Kind of going back to the initial couple posts or the topics of connecting, sharing, and celebrating, I realized in order to do that, I would need to make connections with others first who are actually in the community. And, it's an invisible diversity. So first, it's just determining who those individuals are. Next, just to hear from their experiences, whether they shared them with me privately or were willing to share publicly. And also the celebration piece of, hey, what does pride mean to you? And how do we tie pride into the agriculture sector specifically?
Wow. Be authentically me for the benefit of others. I got to think about that one for a while. I like that. Thank you.
I like it too. And I think one of the more recent posts you have up there is something, I'm just going to paraphrase it, something like, there's this idea that there's no LGBTQ plus people in agriculture. And part of what we're doing here is to show that there are. And I love that because, people might say, well, there's, we don't know them, so they don't exist, but it's just completely inaccurate, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's something we have to claim and be open to claim, to connect with each other first off, and also just to know that, hey, I'm not the only one here, right?
For sure. So Erin and I, we've spent a lot of time talking and thinking about visibility and representation in lots of different conversations that we've been having. And of course, just like what you've been speaking to, the importance of being able to see yourself in a certain role. But we've been sort of thinking about it in sort of an agricultural rural setting versus an urban setting. So maybe right now someone might expect that if they wanted to go connect with other people like them, other gay farmers, they might have to go potentially to the city to try to, find that community. What are your thoughts about how that looks like today, about being, out in the city versus in agriculture or in a rural community? Yeah,
and I'm really glad that you brought up the topic of really rural versus urban representation, because the way I see it, it doesn't matter whether you come from the city or the country. If you look around and you don't see anyone who you can look up to or that you identify with, you're not going to believe that it's possible. And I think if we take the conversation and shift it away from, city and country, and for me, if I think on a personal level of growing up in a religious household where being in the LGBT community is a sin, not even an option, it doesn't matter if you're in the city or the country, you suppress that part of yourself. And instead I put my attention to other things. For me, it was academics, extracurriculars, sports, cows, music, whatever I could. And really it took for me moving away to school, to university, to start to see it and then to be it. So I think it's important, we all have individual experiences, and across the Diversity Imperative podcast, you speak to different individuals from different communities, and, mine isn't going to be representative of everyone in the LGBTQ community, but I think, I had a belief that my place was in agriculture for a long time before I knew I was in the LGBTQ community. So I operated under the belief and accepted a truth that if I was going to be in agriculture, I would need to hide who I was. And in my coming out in ag post in the Pride in Ag Instagram, I talk a little bit about this, needing to prove myself before I could be myself. And I think about that back to my introduction of starting in 4-H and at the age of 10. And if I was bringing my authentic self back then to every dairy 4-H club meeting, I honestly can't say that I would have found agriculture to be my home. And I think that that's a really important idea and understanding, and applying really that concept to this Pride in Ag account. And, what I found is for every single connection that I've made with someone who really has identified as LGBTQ in agriculture, there's at least 2 or 3 that come from agriculture, but say, I chose to leave the agriculture industry because I don't believe there's a space for me here.
Julia, you mentioned feeling that sense of community when you went to university. Was that the first time that you felt that you had a community that you belonged to, or that you could identify with a particular community for the first time? What was that experience like at university?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it was so much the community that was there, because I was very much a part of the Aggie community, and I was very involved with leadership roles and in different organizations there. And I didn't really see the representation in the community, when I say the LGBT community, in that. It was maybe outside of that, the greater university picture. So I didn't have a lot of connections or really a network to folks in the LGBT community, but maybe I was just more open and seeing it more, as opposed to that I was in my small town. It's hard to look back on that time period and reflect on, what it may have been the trigger, but I think it's just more the environment of, for me, it was a time to be social and a time to get to meet people. And to me, that's when I slowly was able to see that light bulb moment of knowing that I was different.
So we're starting to hear more, Julia, about formal groups or these communities that have established in the workplace that are meant to provide a sense of community and acceptance, or a peer network, if you will, for diverse groups. But Pride in Ag is an example of a community outside of the workplace. Do you think this is important, to have that community outside of where we work?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to have something outside of work. I knew about my company employee resource group that is dedicated to the LGBTQ community and allies prior to my actual engagement with them. And for me, it was because my priority was to be out there in the ag industry, and before being more involved with this at my company, because that's where I saw the greatest need. I think also in agriculture, and it depends what facet of it you're working in, but, I don't work in a building with the same people every day. My coworkers are farmers, they're dealers, they're ag industry people that I run into, and a farmer doesn't have a company employee resource group. And, a gay grade 12 student that's making the decision whether to go into ag school or to another industry that, is perceived to be more accepting than agriculture, doesn't have access to that employee resource group either. So I really thought back to when I was struggling and I didn't have someone to reach out to in the agriculture industry. And that really was my main goal too, of starting this account. If I got one message, this was pretty low bar I was setting, but if I got one message from someone who said, thanks for being here, thanks for doing this, I was going to be happy with that, because I didn't know what kind of response I was going to get. But since I received messages on my personal account and all platforms, and this account in Instagram, and a lot to the tune of, hey, I'm in agriculture and I have not come out and I don't really believe that I can. So thank you for being brave and for having courage, because it's allowed me to think that one day I can come out and, be me in this industry. So that was that first goal, and really my thought process behind having something outside of a company workplace. And the end goal really is to have examples of people across the beautifully diverse LGBTQ plus community that are also across all facets of agriculture, because we know how diverse our industry is. And that to me is really the start in being able to have a peer network.
For sure. And I guess I want to ask you too about the ability of people to send you messages anonymously, just like you've described. Because I think sort of as we're sort of listening to you, you're sort of building these layers of your agriculture community and, people that are in the LGBTQ plus community, but maybe it doesn't feel safe quite yet for certain people to be out wherever they are. So it must be important for people to be able to reach out and communicate with you without necessarily having to be public with it right off the bat.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't always have a ton of posts lined up, and I'm okay with it, because I know that for me, it's also about what's happening below the surface, which is those messages and that support and communication that goes on, really giving a line, opening up a line for someone that would not have had anywhere to go with it prior to.
So Erin and I, we've talked before about the sort of the benefits and potential challenges of the traditional aspect of the agriculture sector. So on one hand, it could be viewed to be a very positive thing. We're all very wholesome. We give each other a helping hand when we need it. We're all, very hardworking people. But on the other side of things, that sort of traditional culture might not let them perceive the sort of safety to be themselves in certain settings. And so I just want to ask you about that. Like, how do you feel about sort of that traditional side of things in our sector?
Yeah, I think this comes back to where I was when I started in the industry, and I guess full-time in the industry, I should say. So leaving school, I really battled with those demons. I was maybe midway through university when I started to come to terms with myself and my truth, and having to go through the hoops of coming out to parents and relatives, and things maybe not going so well, and some relationships being put on pause. And then really when I got to my last year of university and starting into the agriculture sector full time, I had a lot of confidence, and I was just ready to kind of come in and bring everything to work. And then, already in my first couple of weeks on the job, sitting on a plane ride beside a coworker and hearing them tell me about how, all I'll need is a good husband with some quota to set me up, and we'll be the great pair, and I'll be set for life. And you initially have so many conversations with folks as you're meeting them that just start to kind of deflate your balloon. So I can definitely relate to that, and hopefully we'll get to kind of a conversation about opportunities we have that don't really require a lot of effort, but will make things better. And I think too, it's just that not always having this pretense that everyone you meet is heterosexual or cisgender. Just give an opportunity to open that conversation, to use more even just inclusive language of just saying partner, saying spouse, instead of always saying husband. I think once or twice in my career early on, I had someone say partner, and it was like, what? I can actually engage with this person in a conversation, because they're not just saying, do you have a boyfriend or a husband? It's like, instead of saying no and moving on, I can actually open up and have a dialogue here. So yeah, it's a little thing, but it has a big impact.
I so agree. And it's such an easy change to make. It's not hard to say partner instead of husband, right? And it's one of those things too that I think people are well-meaning, like when they ask, do you have a husband? Do you have kids? But it's not always about them being well-meaning. It's about sort of how it lands with the other person. It's like, okay, well, you kind of get taken aback, like you say, or your balloon gets deflated. So yeah, it's just an easy change to make, and I think we can all do better at that. So I love that. So we kind of want to throw you a lofty, sort of maybe tough question about other ways that you think our sector can come together to continue to grow awareness and think about visibility and celebrate people that are LGBTQ plus and ag, maybe things that you've seen other countries do well or other sectors, that kind of thing. So if resources and time are not a barrier, what are some of those, some of these big ideas that you think that we could take on as a sector?
I don't know if it's a big idea. It's actually pretty simple, but I think it can have a big impact. And it goes back to another podcast episode I believe you have that's entitled How to Be an Ally. And it really starts with being an ally. If you're here and you're listening, you value diversity, but words and listening only get you so far. And what I far more view as important is action, and being an ally is an action word. It's something as simple as, like we just talked about in this traditional sense of agriculture, using inclusive language that doesn't assume that everyone is cisgender or heterosexual. It's just speaking up if you hear something inappropriate. Another one is showing visible support. So, maybe you have a little rainbow flag at the entrance of your business or in your office for maybe that new employee that's coming in and is a little nervous if they see that their manager had a rainbow flag. That's something that I would like to change maybe one day when I'm a manager, open up that space. I think too, just starting with looking inwardly and understanding the privilege that you have. And I mean, that I even have. I can't just stop and say, well, I'm in the LGBTQ community in agriculture and that's enough for me. I am a white cisgender female and I have a due diligence to educate myself, and I may be in the LGBTQ community, but that also doesn't mean that I can't be an ally to others in this community, to the trans community, for example. So really this idea of allyship, it's just taking the concept and putting it into words or out of words, I should say, and into action. And it's something we can do every day. It may take some effort at first to change your question from, do you have a husband, or do you have kids, to do you have a partner? But it's small changes like that can all of a sudden open up the door to that conversation.
I like that idea, Julia, that they may not necessarily be big, bold ideas, but they're simple gestures, but they're meaningful. Because that simple gesture, like you said, if it's a rainbow flag on the edge of your desk, it says something about the way in which you view the world or the conversations you're open to having. It's a small gesture, but I think it's very meaningful.
I really liked what you said about the ways that the way that you described that we could sort of continue to create awareness and visibility and celebrate folks that are LGBTQ plus in ag, because I think what you spoke to was really about that the power, it's up to us. And it reminded me of the great article that Jen Christie put out last week that sort of talked about that we need to change from within and that the power is with the individual. So it also gives us power too. So power to make change.
Yeah, it's amazing how much a simple gesture can go a long way. And it's something I've been making more of a personal goal of mine, is to acknowledge or reach out to individuals who have had an impact to me along my journey, and just to tell them how significant maybe that conversation was that we had, or that symbol that they showed, how significant it was. And I think back to an example, and one thing we have at work is an employee resource group called Rainbow. And part of being an ally with Rainbow is you sign an ally pledge. And we also have an employee badge. And on the back is an emblem, which is it's wheat in the background in the colors of the rainbow flag. And I was about 2 years in my career when I saw the first ally badge on an employee badge with this rainbow wheat emblem. And the person who had it is someone who I already looked up to. They're a leader in the organization. And the fact that they had this symbol, it really resonated with me. It actually hit me hard like a ton of bricks. And I had to just compose myself and hope that they didn't see the change or the emotion on my face. But it really showed me a couple things. One, it showed me that, hey, I can be a leader in agriculture or in this company and be a part of this community. And two, that, I'm welcome here and I have a place here. And like I said, it's something that I'm trying to be more mindful of, is reaching out to those people that have had these really inspirational moments in my life to tell them what it means to be an ally, and that little action had such a big impact on me, because that individual may have been carrying that employee badge around for years and not even necessarily realizing the impact that it can have. So it's the small things like that rainbow flag in your office, maybe as a new manager with a new hire coming in, you don't know their background, but you having that rainbow flag just opens up that conversation and tells them, hey, this is a safe space and they want me here.
Yeah, it's really a simple gesture, but really powerful. Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, for sure.
Erin and I are interested in learning about employee ERGs. So you mentioned the Rainbow Group at John Deere. What's that kind of all about? So you mentioned that there's a sort of a pledge that you would take or that you would sign your name onto, but what do you see as the positive benefits of having that sort of group at work?
Yeah, and there's a few different employee resource groups that exist. This one specifically, it's really about supporting the LGBTQ community and their allies. And it's also too where I realized that, hey, I can be an ally even though I'm in this community to others in the LGBTQ community. So part of it is, just signing a pledge of allyship, which is some of the actions too that we know are important to take as an ally. And the other part too is really that visible support. One thing we do as well is we have conversations on a monthly basis where we talk about what LGBTQ inclusion is and why it matters to individuals, whether they're allies or in the community. And it really just fosters a dialogue that, you may not realize how it can impact individuals from a wide range of backgrounds, but it's just important to hear their point of view and understand their different experience and how it really all comes under that umbrella of LGBTQ inclusion. So there's a few more pieces to it. I'm pretty new on it, but I really appreciate it and see the importance of having something at work and also outside of the workplace.
Let's just for a moment before we let you go, I want to talk a little bit about how people can, if they want to be more involved in the Pride and Ag, in the Instagram account, how can people get involved? How can people be allies? And we will be sure for people, we'll provide the link to your Instagram account in our show notes. But let's talk a bit about how people can be allies.
Yeah. So I think, being an ally too, it's outside of just the social platforms, kind of some of the examples I just went through. But in terms of linking to the Pride and Ag account, really, right now I'm featuring individuals who are in the community that are able to share about their experience. And amplifying those stories is helpful, as I especially hope to collect more that are different folks across the sector of agriculture, but also across the community. Hopefully it's more examples to give more opportunities that someone can see someone that they relate to. So sharing that is a good start. And also too, if you want to give it some thought and think about how are you an ally? If you identify as an ally to the LGBTQ community, how are you doing that today? And send me a note and maybe we connect further. Maybe we can have a conversation, an Instagram live. Maybe you can instill or motivate some others to challenge themselves and to think more about that. Because I think you're right. I think it does go just beyond, sharing the voices of those who are in the community, but also sharing the voices of those who are allies and how they view that they can step up and also support.
Thanks, Julia. We really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been an awesome half hour already. It's already over. Do you have more questions for me?
To be continued.
Yeah, we're going to have you back, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about here, but thanks very much for your time and your insights. It was a pleasure meeting you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And thanks to our listeners for tuning in to the 5th episode of The Diversity Imperative. Hannah and I look forward to our next conversation in a few weeks' time. Until then, please visit our website, diversityimperative.com, or we'd love to hear from you on our social media outlets. You can find Hannah and I at Diversity in Ag on Twitter and at Diversity Imperative on Facebook and Instagram.